Her blood is worthless. Even the flame refused to touch her. Then she's perfect. The god's bride must be someone no one will miss. Father, please, don't do this. Take her to the sanctum. Guards seize Liora's arms before the flame trial's ashes have even cooled. 1 hour ago, she was the eldest daughter of House Marin, betrothed to the crown prince. Now her own father won't look at her, and the prince is already sliding her ring onto her half-sister's finger. Everyone knows what the 100th bride is. 99 women have been sent down into the drowned golden temple to wed the sleeping dragon god. 99 women have never come back up. But as the guards drag her past the sealed temple doors, something no one expects happens. The doors begin to hum, the gold pillars blaze like sunrise, and a voice 1,000 years dead whispers a name, her name, a name her mother burned from every record on the night she was born. Because the god beneath the temple isn't waiting for a sacrifice. He's been waiting for her. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The morning of the flame trial, Liora Marin stands in a hall of gold and fire, and the whole empire is watching her fail. One by one, the noble daughters of Veilthorn press their palms to the sacred brazier, and one by one, the holy fire answers them. A flicker of ember here, a proud column of pyre there. When her half-sister Sibel steps forward, the flame erupts into a golden crown of soul-tier fire, and the hall gasps, and Crown Prince Dorian rises from his throne to applaud. Then it is Liora's turn. She presses her hand to the brazier, and the fire does something it has never done in 1,000 years of trials. It goes out. Not a weak flame, not a low rank, nothing. The sacred fire dies under her fingers, like a candle drowned in water, and the silence that follows is worse than any laughter. The flame keepers whisper the word before her father can stop them. Flameless. The hall repeats it like a curse spreading through dry grass, and Liora watches her betrothed, the prince who kissed her hand last night and called her his future empress, take one slow step backward, away from her, as if her failure might be contagious. Lord Cassian Marin does not defend his daughter. He apologizes for her. He bows to the throne and calls her a stain on his bloodline, and something in Liora's chest cracks quietly, because she realizes he has been waiting years for permission to say it out loud. Dorian's voice carries across the hall, smooth and public and rehearsed, and she understands this was planned before she ever touched the flame. The betrothal between the crown and House Marin will stand, he announces, transferred to the worthy daughter. Sibel does not even pretend to be surprised. She lifts her hand, and Dorian slides Liora's engagement ring onto her sister's finger in front of 600 nobles, and Sibel looks over his shoulder at Liora and smiles the way a cat smiles at a bird that has already stopped struggling. But humiliation, it turns out, is only the beginning, because the Empire has a use for worthless daughters. That night, the High Priest Malvor arrives at House Marin, wrapped in bone-white robes, his black-veined hands folded, his voice like dust, and he reminds Lord Cassian of the old debt. Every generation, the Gilded Sanctum requires a bride for the sleeping god, a girl of noble birth, offered to keep the last dragon dreaming, because if the white flame ever wakes angry, the Empire burns. 99 brides have descended. 99 brides are simply gone. The families call it an honor. Everyone else calls it what it is. And Lord Cassian, who spent this morning being shamed before the throne, sees his chance to turn a worthless daughter into a valuable corpse. He does not ask Liora. He announces her. Her stepmother orders the red bridal gown before dawn. Only one person weeps. Old Marin, the nurse, who pulls Liora into a storeroom, presses a small gold locket into her hands with shaking fingers, and whispers that it belonged to her mother, that her mother made her swear an oath. If Liora is ever taken to the temple, she must wear it, and she must never, ever let them take her blood before she reaches the altar. Liora asks what that means. The old woman only weeps harder and says, "Your mother burned the records of your birth for a reason, child." And there it is. The first crack in the story. Liora has been told about herself her whole life. 3 days later, the bridal procession winds down the cliff road to the drowned temple, and the Empire treats her death like a festival. Nobles line the route in gold silk. Sibel rides beside the prince, radiant, and leans down as Liora passes to murmur that she'll try to visit her grave. Oh, but wait. The brides don't get graves, do they? Liora keeps her eyes forward. She has stopped hoping someone will save her. Something colder and steadier is settling into her spine, something that feels almost like purpose. Though she cannot yet say why, the closer she gets to the temple, the calmer she becomes. Or why the gold birthmark on her wrist, the little scale-shaped mark she has hidden under bracelets her whole life, has begun to feel warm. The Gilded Sanctum swallows her whole. Beyond the sealed doors, a drowned cathedral stretches into darkness. Pillars of gold rising out of still black water, thousands of candles that no one lights and that never go out, and silence so complete she can hear her own heartbeat echo. Malvor's priests dress her at the water's edge, the crimson gown stitched with gold thread, the sheer sleeves, chains of gold laced over her hands, and finally an antique crown settled into her dark hair, because the god's bride must look like an empress, even if she is only meat. It is here, half hidden by the ritual veils, that Liora clasps her mother's locket around her neck and tucks it beneath the gown. And it is here that she notices the first thing that is wrong. The priests are afraid. Not solemn, afraid. Malvor keeps glancing at the black water as if it might be listening, and when a young priest fumbles the ritual blade, the high priest strikes him with enough force to draw blood and hisses that nothing touches the bride's veins until she is chained to the altar. Liora's mother's warning rings in her ears. Never let them take your blood before the altar. 2 warnings, one from love and one from fear, pointing at the same secret. The altar waits at the heart of the temple, on an island of gold stone in the black water, and behind it rises something Liora first mistakes for a wall of carved ivory. Then the candlelight moves, and she understands. Scales. A wall of white scales, each one larger than a shield, curving away into the dark in both directions. A body coiled around the entire heart of the temple, mountain vast, motionless, ancient. Somewhere above her in the darkness is a head she cannot see, and the silence she has been hearing since she entered is not silence at all. It is breathing, slowed to 1 breath an hour, the sleep of something that does not measure time the way mortals do. The last dragon, the white flame. The god her blood is meant to feed. Malvor chains her wrists to the altar with gold links, and his hands are shaking, and this close she can see the black veins crawling all the way up his neck, and he whispers something that is not a prayer. He whispers, 99 kept the seal fed, and the 100th will finish it. Finish it. Not feed the god. Finish something. Liora pulls against the chains and demands to know what the brides really die for, and Malvor smiles for the first time, a terrible patient smile, and lifts the ritual blade and tells her the truth no bride has ever lived to repeat. The god is not sleeping. He was sealed. 99 brides bled to keep him bound, their blood twisted into chains no dragon can break. And her blood, the blood her mother hid, the blood the flame itself refused to expose this morning because holy fire does not judge what outranks it. Her blood is the final lock. The blade comes down across her palm. Blood wells, bright and shining strangely gold in the candlelight, and Malvor turns her hand to spill it into the ceiling channels carved through the altar stone. But Liora has spent her whole life being underestimated, and she moves first. She wrenches sideways against the gold chains, and instead of falling into the carved channels, her blood scatters across the raw stone, and 3 drops land on the wall of white scales. The temple stops. The candles freeze mid-flicker. The black water goes flat as glass, and then a sound rolls through the drowned cathedral that Liora feels in her bones before she hears it. A sound like a mountain remembering it has a voice. And the wall of scales moves. The coil unwinds. Pillars crack. Water rises in slow, impossible waves, and out of the high darkness descends a head the size of a war galley, crowned in pale horn like winter branches, and two eyes open for the first time in 1,000 years. Molten gold, vertical slit, ancient beyond reckoning, and they do not look at the priests. They do not look at the temple. They look at her. Malvor screams orders, and the priests grab for her chained arms to drag her blood back to the channels, and the dragon exhales. No fire, just breath, white gold and gentle as candlelight, and every chain in the temple turns to dust. The gold links slide off Liora's wrists like sand. The priest's sealing sigils crumble from the pillars. Malvor howls as the black veins on his arms crack and burn away, and he flees into the dark with his robes smoking, and Liora is left standing alone on the altar island, bleeding, crowned, face to face with a god. She should run. Every instinct she was born with should be screaming. Instead, the warmth in her wrist floods up her arm like sunrise, and the golden birthmark she has hidden her whole life ignites into a glowing scale of light, and the dragon lowers his colossal head until one molten eye is level with her, close enough to touch. And Liora, flameless, discarded, sentenced to die, reaches out and lays her bleeding hand against his face. Gold light detonates through the temple, up through the cliff, out of the drowned doors, and far above, the entire capital of Veilthorn watches a pillar of white gold fire split the night sky from the temple no light has left in 1,000 years. In the palace, Prince Dorian goes pale at the feast table. In House Meren, Lord Cassian drops his wine. And in the Gilded Sanctum, a voice speaks for the first time in 10 centuries, vast and quiet, spoken not into the air, but directly into Liora's soul, and the last dragon god says, 1,000 years in chains, and out of all the world, it is your blood that remembers my name. She asks, trembling, what he means. Her blood is nothing, she is flameless, she is the bride they threw away. And the great golden eye softens, and the light around them bends, and where a mountain of white scales stood there is suddenly a man walking toward her out of the glow, tall, white-haired, crowned in light, with her blood still shining on his cheek. And he takes her wounded hand in both of his, and says the words that end everything she thought she knew. They did not send you here to feed a god, little flame. They sent you here to die before you learned what you are, and far above them, the Emperor is already giving the order. The 100th bride has broken the seal, and she must not leave that temple alive. The man who walks out of the light is not what a god should be. He is tall, white-haired, terrible and beautiful, with her blood still gleaming on his cheek like a mark of war. But when he takes her wounded hand, his touch is careful, almost reverent, as if she is the fragile ancient thing, and he is the frightened girl. Gold light gathers where his fingers close over her palm, and when he opens them, the wound Malvor carved into her is gone, sealed into a thin line of shimmer, and Liora realizes she is standing in a drowned temple, holding hands with the being every child in the Empire is taught to fear, and she is not afraid. She should be. She has watched him crumble chains with a breath, and send a high priest running with his robes on fire. But the warmth flooding up from her wrist, from the birthmark that now glows like a coal beneath her skin, is telling her something older than fear. It is telling her she is, for the first time in her life, exactly where she was born to be. He says his name is Orion, though the world that worshipped him called him the White Flame, and his voice in human form is low and rough at the edges, like a voice remembering how to be a voice. And then he says the thing that breaks her open. He says, "You flinched when I healed you. Who taught you that hands only reach for you to hurt you?" And Liora, who did not cry when her father called her a stain, who did not cry when her ring was slid onto her sister's finger, who did not cry walking down the cliff road to her own funeral, feels tears burn her eyes because a stranger, a god, saw in 10 seconds what her own family spent 22 years refusing to see. But there is no time for tenderness, because the temple shudders, dust rains from the cracked pillars, and Orion's head lifts, gold eyes narrowing at the dark, and Liora feels his alarm through the glowing thread between them before he says a word. "They are coming," he says. "Your empire moves quickly when it is terrified." And then he sways. The god sways on his feet, catches himself on the altar stone, and Liora sees what the awakening light had hidden. Fine cracks of darkness running under his luminous skin, like a statue held together by will. 1,000 years of the seal drinking him dry. 99 brides' worth of stolen blood, woven into chains around his power, and though her blood shattered the great binding, the deep chains remain. Anchored, he tells her, to something outside this temple, something that still holds a piece of him hostage. He is awake. He is not whole. And an army is coming down the cliff road for them both. Liora looks at the god leaning on the altar and hears her own voice come out steadier than it has any right to be. "Then tell me what I am," she says, "because they are coming to kill me for it, and I would like to know what I'm dying for." And so, as the sound of boots and war horns filters down through the drowned dark, Orion tells her the true history of the world. 1,000 years ago there was no Veilthorn Empire. There was House Aurelis, the god flame line, mortals whose blood burned with the same fire as the dragon gods, who ruled beside them as partners, not worshippers. The gold pillars, the eternal candles, the drowned cathedral. This was no temple. This was a palace, her palace. The Veilthorns were stewards then, ambitious men with borrowed fire, and Malvor's order were the priests who taught them the oldest sin, that a god's power can be stolen if you are willing to bleed enough innocents to do it. In one night of fire and treachery, the dragon gods were poisoned, the Aurelis line was slaughtered down to the cradles, and Orion, the last god, the strongest, was bound in the wreck of the palace, with chains braided from murdered godflame blood. The Veilthorns took the throne, the priests took the temple, and history was rewritten so completely that the descendants of the murderers now send brides to feed the very seal their ancestors built. But one Aurelis survived. A daughter, smuggled out by a dying queen, hidden among the minor houses, her flame sealed so no trial would ever expose her, her children's flames sealed in turn, generation after generation, mothers binding daughters, hiding the last true blood of the empire in plain sight. Liora's hand rises slowly to the locket at her throat, her mother's locket. "Never let them take your blood before the altar." And Orion looks at the locket, and his ancient eyes go strangely gentle, and he says, "She did not burn the records of your birth to erase you, little flame. She burned them to save you. You are not flameless. You are the most dangerous woman alive, wearing a lock your mother paid dearly to forge." And the moment he says it, the locket grows hot against her skin. It clicks open on its own. Inside there is no portrait, no keepsake, only a single drop of crystallized golden blood, and a word engraved in the old tongue. And the instant Liora breathes the word aloud, the seal her mother placed on her the night she was born shatters like glass. Fire erupts from her skin. Not red fire. Gold, pure, blinding, ancient gold. The god flame that has not burned in a mortal body for 1,000 years, roaring up her arms, streaming through her dark hair, and it does not burn her. It recognizes her. It dances over the crimson gown and the gold chains like a homecoming, and in its light the birthmark on her wrist unfurls into a full blazing sigil. A dragon coiled around a flame, the lost crest of House Aurelis. In the hall of the flame trial, the sacred fire went out when she touched it. Now she understands. It did not reject her. It bowed. Holy fire does not judge what outranks it, and that is the moment The Imperial vanguard breaks through the sanctum doors. Torchlight and steel flood the drowned dark. 50 royal guards fanning across the water walkways with dragon lances leveled, and at their head, in gleaming parade armor he has never once bled in, walks Crown Prince Dorian Veilthorn. He has come to slay the woken beast and drag the witch bride back in chains. He has clearly rehearsed the legend of himself the whole ride down. And then he sees her, Liora, on the altar island, wrapped in living gold fire, crowned, radiant, terrible, the discarded girl remade into something out of the old forbidden paintings, and beside her, a white-haired man, whose shadow on the pillars is the shadow of a dragon. Dorian stops walking. The speech dies in his throat, and Liora watches the calculation crawl across his handsome face, watches him look at her power, the way he once looked at her dowry, and when he finally speaks, his voice slides into the warm, coaxing tone he used the night he called her his future empress. "Liora," he says, "thank the flame you're alive. Come away from that creature. I'll pardon everything. I'll dissolve the betrothal to your sister. I'll make you my consort, my empress, whatever you ask. You were always the one I wanted. A day ago those words would have reached some starving place in her. Now she hears them for what they are, a man trying to pocket a weapon before anyone else can pick it up. And Liora smiles, and her smile is her sister's smile, the cat looking at the bird, and she says, 'You're offering me the honor of marrying you? Dorian, I am already spoken for. You're standing in my wedding hall.'" The prince's face curdles, and behind him, from the shadows of the broken doors, comes the sound of dry hands clapping. Malvor, smoke-scorched, black veins burned from his arms, eyes glittering with something worse than hate, and he is not empty-handed. From his robes he draws a rack of glass vials, each glowing a dull Venus red, and Orion goes rigid beside her, and through the bond, Liora feels a spike of something she never expected a god to feel. Dread. "The blood of the 99, Malvor croons. "You broke the Great Seal, girl, but the binding rites remember." And he shatters the first vial on the stones and begins to chant, and the temple answers with a sound like grinding chains, and crimson sigils ignite across the water, and Orion drops to one knee as bands of red light lash out of the dark and coil around his arms, his throat, dragging the last dragon god down before her eyes. The guards' lances come up. Dorian's sword clears its sheath, courage restored now that the god is on his knees. And something in Liora goes very quiet and very cold. They chained him with murdered blood for 1,000 years. They threw 99 women into the dark and called it holiness. They took her mother, her name, her flame, her whole life, and now they want to take him too. Her hand closes, the godflame answers. What happens next will be retold in the Empire for 100 years, always in whispers. The gold fire does not roar, it moves like a tide, silent and absolute, sweeping across the water without touching a single guard, and every vial in Malvor's rack detonates into harmless golden ash. The red sigils gutter and die. The chains of light dissolve off Orion's body like mist at sunrise, and the 99, freed at last from the vials that caged their stolen blood, rise for one impossible moment, as columns of soft light above the water, 99 brides, 99 faces, turning to look at the girl who ended them. And then they are gone, and the temple is warmer for their passing. Malvor stares at the ash on his hands. And for the first time in a very long life spent making other people afraid, the high priest is afraid. "Take her blood," he screams at the guards. "Take her heart. She is the last lock and the last key." But Orion is rising now, and the pillars are shaking, and the black water is climbing the walls, and Dorian looks into the eyes of the god he came to slay, and discovers the exact size of his own courage. The vanguard breaks and runs. Malvor goes with them, but not before he pauses in the shattered doorway, looks back at Liora with those colourless eyes, and does the most frightening thing he has done all night. He smiles. "Run where you like, girl," he says. You'll come to us. Blood always comes home. And he is gone into the dark, and Liora does not yet understand the threat, and that failure of imagination will cost her more than she can guess. They cannot stay. The sanctum is a broken fortress with one door, and the Empire will come back with more than 50 men. So that night, for the first time in 1,000 years, the white flame spreads his wings under the open sky. Liora rides at the base of his neck, wrapped in his warmth against the screaming wind, and beneath them the sea unrolls like hammered silver, and above them the stars are so close she could gather them like coins, and despite everything, the price on her head, the army behind them, the dread coiled in her stomach, she laughs, really laughs, for the first time in years, and she feels the great body beneath her rumble in answer, and realizes the last dragon god is laughing too. He brings her to the Ashen Vale. Once it was the summer city of House Aurelius. Now it is 1,000 years of ruin, gold domes collapsed into meadows, streets swallowed by wildflowers. But the murals survive. By the light of her own flame, Liora walks a gallery of her ancestors. Queens with her cheekbones, kings with her stubborn jaw, children with gold scale marks on their wrists riding dragons over a city made of light. And at the gallery's end, one image stops her heart. A woman in a crimson gown, dark-haired, crowned in gold, standing with her hand pressed to the cheek of a white dragon, her forehead against his brow. Liora's exact pose on the altar, painted 1,000 years before she was born. Her name was Aurelia, Orion says quietly, and Liora hears a millennium of grief compressed into 3 words. The first queen of the Godflame. My bonded. When the traitors came, she held the palace gates alone, so the children could flee. Her blood began my chains. They made sure of that cruelty. And her line, hidden and hunted and stubborn as sunrise, is the only reason I am free. He looks at Liora then, and she braces for the thing she suddenly dreads. That she is a replacement, an echo, a borrowed face. But he shakes his head, as if he heard the fear, and says, You are not her. You are the answer to her. She held the gate. You opened it. And whatever this is between us, little flame, it began the moment you defied the knife on that altar and chose to bleed on your own terms. Not a memory, you. And there, in the ruins of her stolen kingdom, he tells her the truth of the bond humming between them. Blood woke it, a half-bond, unchosen, an accident of fate and defiance, but a full bond, the true joining, the thing the old world called a god marriage, that cannot be taken, or forced, or bled out of anyone. It must be vowed, freely, forever. It would restore him wholly, unlock her completely, bind their souls past death itself. And I will never ask, he says. You have spent your life being handed to men, like a debt to be settled. Whatever comes, that will not be your story with me. Word of them spreads faster than wings. In the villages of the borderlands, where the old faith never quite died, farmers find gold flame marks glowing on their ancient shrine stones for the first time in living memory, and grandmothers weep. And by the time Liora and Orion shelter in a mountain hamlet, disguised and hooded, the people already know. A child sees the sigil on her wrist. An old shepherd goes to his knees in the mud, and then the whole village follows, one by one, hands over hearts, whispering the words their ancestors were burned for saying. The flame returns. They feed them, they shelter them, they ask for nothing. And Liora, who 3 days ago could not get her own father to look at her, stands in a barn at midnight watching a mother teach her daughter to bow to the old crest, and understands for the first time that this is no longer an escape. It is a rebellion, and every rebellion is paid for in blood. The Empire's answer comes at dawn. Not 50 men this time, a legion, ringing the valley with dragon lances and ballistae, wound with chains of blessed iron, and at their head ride 3 banners, the Emperor's gold, Dorian's silver, and the grey falcon of House Marin, because Lord Cassian has been given one chance to save his house by delivering his daughter's heart in a box. But it is none of these that makes Liora's blood run cold. It is the wagons, black iron wagons, and around them, drifting like smoke given the shape of women, the wraiths, for Malvor has not finished with the 99 after all. The blood she freed was only what he carried. The deep reserves beneath the temple still hold the residue of 1,000 years of murder, and from it he has dredged up shadow echoes of the dead brides, bound and compelled, forced even in death to serve the seal, and he sends them shrieking down the valley ahead of the army, knowing that Liora will not burn them. And he is right. Orion's fire could unmake them in a breath, and Liora screams at him not to, because through her own flame she can hear them, faint and drowning. Help us, free us, we didn't want this. The ballistae fire. Chain bolts scream past Orion's wings. The wraiths swarm him like grief made solid, and he will not fight them either. She feels through the bond that he knows every one of their names, has carried every one of their deaths for 1,000 years, and the legion advances, and it is all about to collapse into ruin when Liora stops retreating, plants her feet in the churned mud, and does the thing no chant of Malvor's ever planned for. She opens her arms to the dead. The god flame pours out of her, not as a weapon, but the way it touched the 99 in the temple, the way it healed, the way it recognized, and where it meets the wraiths it does not burn the women, it burns the chains. One by one the shrieking shadows shudder, and still, and become for a heartbeat their true selves. A red-haired girl in a bridal crown, a grey-eyed woman with a soldier's bearing, a child, heavens forgive them, a child, and each one meets Liora's eyes with something like sunrise, and goes free. The legion falters. Soldiers who came to kill a witch are watching her weep as she frees the Empire's murdered daughters, and men begin to lower their lances without orders. Dorian is screaming at them. Cassian is grey-faced and silent, and Malvor, watching his weapon dissolve into light, plays the card he has been holding since the temple. He rides forward alone under a banner of parley, close enough that only her flame-sharpened ears will catch every word, and he says, conversationally, almost kindly, "You have your mother's gift for ruining careful work. She fought too, you know. 22 years ago, when we finally traced the Aureli's line to her door." Liora goes still. The whole valley goes distant and small. She has believed her mother dead since she was 3 years old. A fever, they told her. A quiet grave. Malvor watches her face with the satisfaction of a craftsman, and continues, "Dead? Oh, child. Dead blood binds nothing. The deep chains that still cripple your god. Did you never wonder what they are anchored to? Ilara of House Aurelis has been alive in the obsidian vault beneath the imperial palace for 19 years, bled one drop at a time, kept on the very edge of the dark, the living anchor of everything that remains of the seal. She is why your dragon still cracks and staggers. She is the last chain, and the mark on Liora's wrist flares white-hot, as through the bond she feels Orion's shock confirm it. The wrongness he has felt since waking, the piece of himself still hostage. It has a heartbeat. It has a name. It is her mother. Malvor lets the silence do its work, then delivers the Emperor's terms with the serenity of a man reading a dinner invitation. The blood moon rises in 7 days. Surrender yourself at the gates of the imperial capital before it sets. Alone, collared in blessed iron, your flame sealed, and your mother lives, comfortably imprisoned, and your dragon keeps his freedom, crippled but alive. Refuse, and on the 7th night we bleed Ilara dry, the deep chains lock forever, your god remains broken for eternity, and we will still come for you, and for every village that bent its knee to your pretty little crest. 7 days, princess. Blood always comes home. He turns his horse and rides back through the legion, and the army withdraws like a tide promising to return, and Liora stands in the trampled mud of the valley, with the freed soul's light still fading around her. And her mother is alive. Her mother is alive, Her mother has been alive and in the dark under the palace for 19 years, while Liora slept 3 floors above her father's wine cellar and believed in a fever and a quiet grave. That night, in the ruins of the Ashen Vale, she does not rage and she does not weep. She stands before the mural of Aurelia, holding the gate, and she thinks until the candles burn low, and Orion does not interrupt her, because gods know what it looks like when a queen is being born. It is nearly dawn when she finally speaks. "They want me collared at their gates," she says. "They want the last Aurelis to walk into the capital as a prisoner, and they will make my mother's life the leash forever. There is only one way I enter that city, Orion, and it is not in chains." He asks what she intends, and Liora turns from her ancestor's painting, and the first light of morning catches her crown, and the god flame rises gold in her eyes as she takes the hand of the last dragon god and gives him her answer. "You said the full bond must be vowed, freely, forever. You said you would never ask, so I'm asking. Marry me, Orion, before the blood moon. Let them open their gates for a surrender, and receive a god at full power, and a queen with her flame unbound, come to take back her mother, her throne, and her name." For a moment the last dragon god simply looks at her, this girl the world threw away, now asking him to war and to wed in the same breath. And then Orion, the white flame, terror of empires, smiles like sunrise breaking a 1,000-year night, and answers, "Little flame, I thought you'd never ask." They are married at dawn on the 6th day, in the ruins of the city her ancestors built, beneath the mural of the queen who held the gate. There is no cathedral choir and no imperial blessing, and it is the most sacred thing the old world has seen in 1,000 years. Word travels the mountain paths overnight, and by first light the Ashen Vale is full of people, shepherds and farm wives and blacksmiths and children, the keepers of the forbidden faith, climbing through the wildflower streets in their patched festival best, because the flame is taking a bride, and someone must witness it. An old blind priestess of the hidden shrines speaks the rite from memory, her voice shaking, because she learned these words as a girl, never dreaming she would live to say them. Liora wears crimson and gold, the bridal colours the Empire stole from her house and never understood. Red for the blood that endures, gold for the fire that returns, and her dark hair is crowned with the antique circlet the temple priests set on her head when they dressed her for slaughter, reclaimed now, remade into the truest crown in the world. And Orion waits for her at the end of an aisle of kneeling strangers in his human form, white and gold, the morning light gathering at his back like wings that cannot quite stay hidden. And when he sees her, the last dragon god, who has watched 1,000 years of sunrises through the dark of a sealed temple, looks at her like he has never seen light before. The vows of a god marriage are short. The old tongue wastes no words. She gives him her name, her true full name, Liora of House Aurelis, spoken aloud for the first time in her life, and he gives her his, the real one, the deep one, the name her blood whispered through a broken seal, the name no mortal throat has carried in 10 centuries, and when their joined hands close around a single shared flame, gold and white braided together, the full bond strikes through them both, like dawn hitting the sea. The cracks of darkness under Orion's skin flood with light and vanish. Power pours back into him from wherever the ages hid it. So much power that the ruins tremble and the wildflowers bloom out of season in a spreading ring around the wedding party, and Liora feels her own flame finish becoming itself. No longer fire she carries, but fire she is, steady as a heartbeat, deep as her mother's line. And beneath it all, faint but unbreakable, she feels him. His devotion, his grief, his 1,000 years of patience, his wonder at her, woven now into her soul past the reach of death. The blind priestess pronounces them bonded. The mountain people cheer loud enough to shake birds from the ruins. And far away, in the imperial capital, every candle in the palace burns white for a full minute, and no one can explain why. and the emperor doubles the watch on the walls. On the seventh night, the blood moon rises like a wound over the imperial capital, and the gates open for a surrender. She comes alone, as commanded, on foot as commanded, collared in dark iron, as commanded, her hands bound before her crimson gown dusty from the road, walking up the great triumphal avenue between ranks of soldiers and the massed, muttering crowds of the capital, because the emperor has made her humiliation a public festival, as her family once made a festival of her death. From the high dais before the palace, the architects of her ruin watch her come, Emperor Aldrich Veilthorn in his stolen gold, Malvor at his side, before a ritual altar of black stone, the deep chain rite prepared, and seated in an iron chair at the altar's heart, thin as winter branches, grey-streaked hair, and a face Liora has seen only in dreams, and one burned portrait, her mother. Alara of House Aurelis, alive, blinking against torchlight she has not seen in 19 years, scanning the avenue with the desperate confusion of a woman who has just been told her dead daughter is walking toward her, and arrayed on the steps below the throne, glittering and triumphant, Crown Prince Dorian. Sibel in imperial silver, wearing Liora's ring, Lord Cassian Marin, restored to favour, his face carefully empty as his eldest daughter walks to her doom, and beside him his wife, who ordered the bridal gown before dawn. Sibel cannot resist. She never could. As Liora reaches the foot of the dais, her sister glides forward a step, tilts her head with that fox-sharp smile, and pitches her voice to carry across the plaza. "Look at you," she says, "collared like a stray. You know, I'm almost sorry it ends this way. You made such a lovely sacrifice." And Liora lifts her eyes for the first time since the gates, and looks at her sister with something that is almost pity, and says, quietly, "Sibel, where do you think your fire comes from?" A ripple of confusion crosses the dais. Sibel's smile flickers. And Malvor understands one heartbeat too late, his colourless eyes snapping wide, because he alone knows the answer. The Veilthorn flames, all of them, the Emperor's soul and Dorian's soul, and the counterfeit fire his own rights braided into Sibel's throat, the year her mother paid him to make her daughter worthy of a prince. Every spark of it, drawn for 1,000 years from one source. The seal, the chained, bleeding power of a stolen god. Then Liora smiles and snaps the iron collar off her neck with 2 fingers, like tin, like a ribbon, and says, "I renegotiated." The plaza does not even have time to scream before the sky answers. The blood moon vanishes. Something vast eclipses it, descending out of the dark in absolute silence. And then the silence ends, and the roar of the white flame at full power breaks over the capital, like the sky splitting, rattling every window in the city, dropping half the imperial army to its knees by pure instinct, and Orion lands on the triumphal avenue behind his wife, wings mantled, gold eyes blazing, whole and unbound for the first time in 1,000 years, and the torches of the entire capital bend toward him like grass in a wind. Chaos erupts on the dais. The Emperor is screaming orders. Ballistae crews scramble on the walls. Malvor lunges for the black altar, for the right, for the last chain. "Seize the anchor," he shrieks. "Bleed the anchor, seal them both." And a priest's knife flashes toward Alara's throat. And that is the last mistake the Order of the Seal ever makes. Liora does not run. She has learned better than running. She opens her hand, and the god flame crosses the plaza faster than sight, and it does what it has always done for her. It does not burn the innocent. It burns chains. The knife turns to golden ash. The iron chair falls apart like rotten wood. The deep chain sigils carved into the black altar, the master bindings, the anchorite that has fed on her mother's blood for 19 years and crippled a god for 1,000, all of it ignites gold and unravels at once, and the sound it makes is not an explosion but a sigh, a vast tectonic release, as the last chain in the world lets go. 3 things happen in the same instant. Orion staggers as the final stolen piece of himself comes home, and his roar this time is not rage. It is grief and triumph and a millennium of held breath released, and every hidden shrine stone in the empire blazes gold in answer. Liora slumps forward, free, into the arms of the daughter who is suddenly there to catch her, because Liora crossed the plaza before the ash finished falling, and every counterfeit flame in the Veilthorn dynasty goes out. It happens in front of 40,000 witnesses. The Emperor's golden aura gutters and dies like a pinched candle. Dorian cries out and claws at his own collar as the soul sigil over his heart fades to a pale scar. And Sibel, radiant Sibel, the worthy daughter, screams in the middle of the imperial dais as her borrowed fire streams off her skin like smoke and leaves her standing in front of the assembled empire exactly as she truly is. Flameless. The word moves through the crowd, the way it once moved through the trial hall, like a curse through dry grass. Except this time, it is true. This time, it was always true, of all of them. A dynasty of stolen fire, a nobility of borrowed light, an empire warming itself for 10 centuries at a god's open wound. The soldiers on the walls look at their ballistae, and at the dragon, and at the girl on the ground cradling the prisoner the crown kept secret for 19 years, and one by one, the ballistae crews step back from their weapons. A grizzled legion commander, a man who was in the valley, who watched Liora weep as she freed the Empire's murdered daughters, is the first. He walks to the front of his ranks, in full view of the Emperor, unbuckles his sword, lays it on the stones, and kneels. His legion kneels behind him, then the next, then the walls. Then, in a slow tide that starts with the poor quarters and rolls inward, the city itself, 40,000 people going down like a wave, until the only people left standing in the imperial capital are a huddle of trembling nobles on the dais and an emperor whose army has just resigned. Aldrich Veilthorn does not kneel. Say this for the old wolf. He chooses to die standing, sword drawn, spitting curses at the dragon who ruined his line's great theft. But Orion does not burn him. The last dragon god lowers his head level with the emperor, looks at him for a long, terrible moment with those ancient gold eyes, and then speaks aloud, in a voice the whole plaza hears in their bones. "No," he says. "Fire is too clean for you. You will have a trial. A human one. Every record my wife's mother can name, every vault your priests kept. Read into daylight before the people you ruled. You will live a long time, Aldrich Veilthorn. You will live to hear all of it." And somehow that sentence lands harder than any flame. The Emperor's sword arm sags, and the Imperial Guard themselves take him. And history will record that the Veilthorn dynasty ended not in fire, but in paperwork, which Liora will always privately consider Orion's cruelest and most elegant judgment. Malvor's end is stranger, and no one who sees it forgets. As the last chain unravels, the High Priest is seized not by soldiers but by time. 1,000 years of it. The seal's stolen vitality has been the only thing keeping his heart beating since the night of the first betrayal. He was there. He was always there, the same priest under a century of borrowed faces, and with the god's power finally fully withdrawn, the centuries come home to him all at once. He ages a decade with every step of his attempted escape. He is dust and empty robes before he reaches the plaza's edge, and the night wind takes him, and the 99 are avenged not by any hand, but by the simple, patient arithmetic of the years he stole, which leaves House Meren. They bring her father and stepmother and sister before the dais in the grey hour before dawn, and the crowd, drunk on revolution, howls for fire. And Liora stands with her mother's hand in hers and looks at the 3 people who auctioned her to a grave, and finds, sifting through the ashes of everything she felt for them, that they no longer have the power to make her cruel. Lord Cassian breaks first, of course. He always understood which way the wind blew. He is halfway into a speech about how he always suspected her greatness, how House Marin stands ready to serve the restored blood, when Liora stops him with one lifted hand and says the sentence she has been carrying since the trial hall. "You called me a stain on your bloodline," she says. "You were right, father. We simply disagreed about the direction of the stain." And then she gives the three of them her judgment, and it is worse than fire. Nothing. No execution, no dungeon, no dramatic exile for the ballads. House Marin is dissolved, its lands returned to the crown, its name struck from the rolls of nobility, and its former members are free to go, to work, to live small, ordinary, unwatched lives in whatever village will have them, with no title, no flame, no audience, and no one required to ever look at them again. She gives them, precisely, what they gave her: invisibility. Sibel understands it fully. Liora sees the exact moment her sister grasps that there will be no gallows to weep prettily beneath. No legend, not even hatred, just a long life of being no one. And that is the only moment in the whole night that Sibel screams. Dorian, stripped of flame and throne in the same hour, is remanded to the trial courts with his father. History will remember him chiefly in a jest that spreads through the taverns within the week, that the crown prince was engaged to the true empress and traded her away for a candle that blew out. Elara Aurelis lives. This must be said plainly, because for 19 years it was not true enough. She lives. The palace healers and the god flame between them mend what the obsidian vault broke, and though she will always tire easily and always keep a lamp burning at night, she is there in the sunlit East Tower when her daughter can slip away from the rebuilding, there with tea going cold between them, because neither can stop talking, 19 years of words, all trying to fit through the door at once. She tells Liora about her father, her real father, an archivist of the hidden faith who died the night the order came, buying them time on a staircase with a fire iron, because apparently loving Aurelis women and holding gates is a heritable condition among the men of that family. She tells her about the sealing of her flame, the hardest thing she ever did, done weeping over a cradle, with the order's hounds 2 valleys away. And when Liora shows her the locket, her mother goes silent for a long moment, and then laughs and cries at once and says, "I paid a witch 3 years of my life for that lock, and you broke it in one night with a wedding." Coronation Day comes with the first snow. They crown her in the Gilded Sanctum, her palace restored, the black water drained to reveal floors of gold mosaic, the eternal candles joined by 10,000 mortal ones, the drowned cathedral remade into the throne hall it was always meant to be. The blind priestess who married them sets the crown of House Aurelis on her head, and the roll of her titles takes the herald a full minute. Empress Liora of House Aurelis, the 100th bride, the unchainer, bride of the white flame. But the people watching from the galleries, the shepherds and the soldiers, and the freed and the faithful, simply call her what the mountain village called her first, the flame that returned. Orion stands at her right hand in white and gold, her consort and her god and her impossible, patient husband, and when the moment comes for the empire to swear to its new empress, the last dragon god kneels first, a god, kneeling, to the girl an empire threw away, and 40,000 voices follow him down. And when the ceremonies are done, and the hall at last is empty, the Empress of Veilthorn that was, and Aurelis, that is, kicks off her ceremonial shoes, walks down the golden steps of her own throne, and stands with her dragon in the candlelight, the way she stood on the night everything changed, his great white head lowered to her, her hand against the warm ivory of his cheek, her forehead pressed to his brow, crimson and gold and 1,000 candles, the mural in the ashen veil made flesh a second time. "My blood woke a god," she murmurs, half laughing, into the quiet between them. And through the bond, warm as sunrise, wrapping around her soul the way his body once curled around the heart of a drowned temple, comes his answer, "No, little flame, your blood only opened the door. Everything I woke for you. Deep beneath the throne hall, in the warm dark where the black water used to stand, the oldest chamber of the palace is quietly changing. It was called the Vault of Dawn once, before the ceiling, and along its walls rest 30 smooth shapes, the color of pearl and morning, each one the size of a cradle, cold and silent for 1,000 years. But the god is free now, and the god flame walks the halls above, and the empire's fire has come home. And on the night of her coronation, as Liora sleeps in her husband's arms above, far below in the Vault of Dawn, for the first time in 10 centuries, one of the pearl-white shapes rocks, very gently, in the dark. The last dragon, it turns out, may not be the last for long.